life on a piece of paper, held by a magnet on the refrigerator, said it all. You can't change the mind of an 18-year-old. Cloud of dust coming from a Gran Torino, taking off. Population, one less restless soul, runaway to below.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Unexplained Reality with Brian Quinn.
And Harrison Quinn.
Who's back. And we're not doing it through Skype, because obviously I got to figure that out. It didn't, I listened to the episode last week, and the first part of it was hideous. It was not good. So I apologize for that, and we will find a better Skype recording method, because obviously the two I've tried stink. So, how's it been, buddy? I hadn't seen you in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Pretty good. Not much going on, you know. Got some things going on. Someone recently in my family had a unidentified flying object encounter. So not put any names out, but we'll I'm gonna get some more details on that, and we'll be most likely we'll be not a whole episode, but we'll be talking about that in a later episode.
Might actually talk to him. I don't know.
Yeah, might have to talk to him about it.
That's pretty cool stuff.
Pretty bizarre what happened, actually. But I saved that for when we do it. But you guys are gonna like it. It was pretty interesting. He's got a couple really good theories. Him being cool. Big into aeronautics engineering and everything like that. Yeah,
that's cool. We'll look forward to that. And we got an interview coming up with someone else we're real excited about. Some good information. It's gonna be really cool. And I'm not gonna speak too much on it till we get lined up. We'll probably be doing that interview next week, so we'll see when it comes out. But it'll definitely go out on Instagram and Twitter and stuff, Facebook. So if you follow us there, you'll see it. If you don't follow us there, you should. So go do it. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Unexplained Reality. You should be able to find us. Or you can just look at the show notes for this episode, and you will see all the links, and you can just click on them and go to it, or put in our Instagram ID and look us up, follow us. We'd love that. Also, our normal spill, unexplained.reality@yahoo.com. So if you have any stories, encounters, you just want to hang out, talk with us, whatever, shoot us a message there, and we'll definitely like to speak with you and engage with you. So, you have any news tonight, buddy?
Mm-mm.
Well, of course, as usual, I have a couple things. This first one is from phantomsandmonsters.com. And it's called The Angel of Mercy. And this comes from a story from Dave in Minnesota. Wrote that about an unusual event that happened to him. This happened in the 80s. He says probably around 86 or 87, the east side of St. Paul, at the intersection of Bradley Street and Maryland Avenue. It was approximately 11 at night, and I was lying on the couch when I heard a loud crash. I ran outside to see how bad of an accident it was, and when I got to the scene, I saw that a motorcycle had hit a car broadside that was turning onto Maryland Avenue. The driver and the passenger were thrown over the top of the car, with the driver landing on the street with his head against the curb, while the passenger was ejected onto the grass of the boulevard. He says, I was the first one there, except for a nurse dressed all in white who was there when I arrived. She was already bending over the motorcycle driver whose head had hit the curb. She looked at me and told me, I have this one. You take care of the other. So I went over to the other passenger who had landed on the grass boulevard. The boy's hand was ripped open and he was in shock but conscious. I had to put pressure on his hand because he was bleeding profusely, and then watched the nurse still bent over the other boy. Within a few minutes, other people began arriving, including a policeman. When the policeman arrived, I made up a new word. He went over to the boy that had hit his head. He spoke with the nurse, looking after the boy, then came over to me and asked me how he was doing. He looked at the one I was tending to and told me to keep the pressure on the cut and keep talking to him to keep him awake. Then he went back over to the nurse that was taking care of the other kid. About this time, the ambulance could be heard in the background. Making its way to the scene of the accident, the policeman came back over to me and said that he didn't think the other one was going to make it, and asked again how this one was doing. I told him this one was okay for now, but was definitely going into shock. He was shaking because of the shock. Then the policeman met the ambulance, and they first looked at the badly injured boy. Then the policeman came back to ask about the one I was with. He asked me if I saw where the nurse went. I had not. By this time, paramedics had arrived and taken over for me. The policeman was asking the crowd that gathered if they had saw where the nurse had gone. He came over to me and took down my information. He again asked if I saw her. I said yes, I spoke with her. He said no one else seems to know where she went, as if she just disappeared. Another motorcyclist was with them, and I ended up giving him a ride in order to pick up the badly injured's mother and drive her to the hospital. Having done this, I drove back home. The motorcycle driver was pronounced dead at the hospital. Was the nurse really an angel coming to take someone who was passing? Weird stuff. Strange. So it's a pretty interesting story. I have another one here. I don't know if I'm going to read this. This looks pretty long. It's not bad. Okay, we'll read it. It's a Bigfoot story, so I'm a sucker for Bigfoot stories. This is Missouri Bigfoot Experiences, also on Phantoms and Monsters. It says, during my ongoing research into the many Bigfoot encounters that have occurred in the Taney County area over the years, I posted a request for information on the timeline of a Facebook group called Taney County, Missouri History, Landmarks, and Vintage Photography. I was seeking information on Booger Place names and received a message from Darla, pseudonym, concerning Booger Knob near Rockaway Beach. Then to my surprise she added, I saw something a few years ago, but I couldn't really explain what it was, and my ex-husband couldn't either. It definitely wasn't any kind of animal either of us had ever seen, but when we stopped and turned around, it was gone. Just took it as something we couldn't explain and never really thought too much about it. I immediately responded with a request for additional information. She soon responded. It was probably about 8 foot tall, kind of dark gray with a little brown. Had a mane kind of like a male lion, but shorter hair around the body and legs. Was walking upright on back legs, but once we got close in our car, it got on all fours and took off extremely fast. We slowed down and then stopped to turn around immediately and drove back and forth a few times trying to see what it was, but it was completely gone or hiding. Never saw it again. I inquired concerning when it occurred and was told probably close to 5 years ago now, 2012, and was right before dark. Looked like it was coming out of the woods towards the lake. No odd smells or sounds, but we were in a car going about 25 miles per hour around a corner. I asked about the time of year and it was during the summer. I'd say probably July or August because we had our windows up and the air on. Her final comment on the sighting was, I'm not saying what I saw was Bigfoot, but I know I'm not crazy. My ex and I both saw something neither of us had ever seen before in our lives. I can't explain it. I spent a lot of time in the woods, and that was definitely a first. She now lives approximately a half mile from where the sighting took place. I proceeded to provide her with a rundown of some of the things to listen for, especially during the evening or at night. Listen for sounds such as a tree being struck loudly with a wooden club, sounds like two rocks being clacked against each other, or any animal calls you do not recognize. All of these are common signs of Bigfoot activity. No kidding. That's pretty cool. Alright. This is another one from cryptozoologynews.com. This is Dogman filmed in South Africa. Or is it? Resident of Uppington, Northern Cape, has released footage of what some believe to be a dogman creature. The footage, about 3 minutes long, shows a pack of dogs and a human-like figure running on all fours, or on four legs. The person uploading the video said he was driving in his vehicle when he noticed the strange figure. A person from the area told Cryptozoology News the alleged creature is a local man known as Philip Oliphant, a 19-year-old whose claimed love for dogs made him behave just like them. The dogman is a cryptid reputed to live in the northwestern quadrant of Michigan's Lower Peninsula, although other sightings have been reported in different locations such as Kentucky. The beast was first reported to have been seen in 1887 by two lumberjacks who described it as having a human body and a dog's head. In 2015, Christina Del Parker, author of 100 Bigfoot Nights, told Cryptozoology News that a few dogmen and Bigfoot beings roam around her United States property and was able to gather a video of one of them. She described the animals as being the size of a man with pointy ears placed on top of their heads. Their bodies were reportedly covered in brown patchy hair and had human-like fingers with thick claws. The Northern Cape is South Africa's largest province and has a low population density. So we watched the video and it was pretty. The dude runs pretty freaky. I mean, he does kind of look like a dog, but with super long legs. And yeah, it's just very odd. I'd freak out if I saw that too. But I think it's just obviously just a normal person that's been doing this for a while. So he's kind of taken the stance and kind of the way he prances and jumps around and looks like a dog.
And it reminded me almost more of a horse than a dog. I mean,
yeah,
the way when he walks, he kind of like gallops almost. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I know a lot of smaller dogs do that. Like we've got a Chihuahua.
Mm-hmm. He's a prancer.
He's a deerhead, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a deerhead.
And he prances a lot. But bigger dogs, they don't really prance. They do have really.
But Louis does.
Louis prances.
Yeah,
but Louis is a special case.
He's awesome.
Yeah, Louis is my sister's dog. But a lot of the bigger dogs take longer strides, and they'll move two legs at a time.
Yeah.
But the way he was doing it, he would move like his right arm and his right leg at the same time.
Yeah.
But dogs, they'll do their right back leg and their front left leg at the same time, and they'll interchange between them. But he was moving both on the same side.
Yeah.
Which was really it. I mean, it really like got under my skin. I couldn't figure out why, and I figured that's.
Yes. It's kind of almost like disturbing.
Yeah, the way he walks.
To watch it was like, yeah.
Yeah, and there was the second follow-up video where they got a closer video of him, and it was someone in a car, or not the person in the truck, but someone who was on the street and they saw him.
It seemed like a group of people or something were sitting there, and he was putting on a little show for him.
Yeah,
jumping around with
he was like. His back looked like it had been, like, he'd probably been doing that for a long time, but his back looked like
his hips looked all crazy looking. They kind of stuck up.
Like if you were to go down on hands and knees, like you were about to do push-ups, but, like, not go into the ready position, it looked like that, but he'd been doing that for, like, 3 years, so his back had, like, sank down and his hips were up, and it was really uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah, if I did that a couple times, my colon probably come out.
Reminded me that
oh my gosh!
You
I was imitating your dog and my colon fell out.
That reminds me of the story Mom told us when we were Amber and the sisters had come down. It was Amber and Kelsey and me, and we were all out going to Five Below. She talked about the story with the little kid in the pool drain.
Oh yeah. That's just ugh. Yeah, we won't get into that. All right. So, you got anything else to add?
No,
Just don't be acting like a dog jumping around. Lose
Nope.
your colon.
I prefer to keep my colon.
Yeah. Well, tonight's show, the idea came to us. Honestly, I'd never thought about doing this, but this came from Richard in the UK. He wrote us a very nice email 2 weeks ago. And we appreciate that. And I asked him, he just wrote us basically to say he liked the show and, basically just giving us some praise there. And I wrote him back and asked him if he had any stories or encounters. And he said, well, actually, I got some suggestions. And this was one of them. So tonight we're knocking one of them off of his list. We're going to talk about Salem Witch Trials. And I got to honestly say, until this episode, I had never really researched it. And it was very interesting, to say the least. I guess, we learned about it in school. I did. And, but I didn't learn about I don't remember hearing this craziness because the stuff that went on was just it was not what I was expecting, so anyways, we'll just if you're good with it, buddy, we'll just start kicking into it. This a lot of this information I got from this is from the book Witches, the absolutely true tale of disaster in Salem by Rosalind Schanzer.
I'd say Schanzer.
Is a great book. If you need information or want to learn more about this, there's a number of good books out there about the Salem Witch Trials. This one I would highly recommend. Like I said, it's called Witches, the Absolute True Tale of Disaster in Salem by Rosalind Schanzer. So anyways, let's kick into it. You good? Good? All right.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I heard about the Salem Witch Trials, but I didn't know. I guess I never really understood what all went on. I just thought, these ladies got accused of being witches and they got hung. That's pretty much the extent of what I knew.
Mm-hmm.
It went a lot deeper than that, and it was very interesting how what all transpired. I consider it, like, after reading this, one of the dark spots in the formation of this country, because it was just a bunch of craziness. But anyways, you'll see what I'm talking about by the time we get to the end of this. So bear with us. This is going to be extensive. So Margaret Jones, the stuff that happened in the Salem Witch Trials happened between 1692 and 1693, the majority of it. However, prior to that, there'd been witches. It was just, you had the Puritans that came to this country. They were immigrants from Europe. And, of course, they came to this country. Well, country was, we had Indians were indigenous here. So you had these people that foreigners came in and taken land. And so, obviously, there was going to be battles. The Indians, you're coming to their home ground. It's like if we went to any country and just invaded, So, there was a lot of friction. And the Puritans were a very, very deeply regarded religious people. And a lot of faith there. And they really looked upon the Indians as kind of devils, or workers for the devil, or just evil. And I guess a lot of that probably came from the antics or the way the Indians went about it. But they lived in this continent on their own, and then these people show up, and they're trying to protect their own. So, anyways, it gives you a little background. So, it wasn't just what happened from 92 to 93. That's the heart of the Salem Witch Trials. But there were other people being accused of witchcraft prior to that. And just because of the faith there with the Puritans. So the first of those being Margaret Jones. She was the first witch to be hanged. She was a healer from Charlestown, Massachusetts. It was claimed that she could cause violent pains, deafness, and vomiting just by touching you. She was also accused of killing animals via witchcraft, and she was tried and hanged in 1648. Now we fast forward, get up into the closer to 1692. The heart of the Salem Witch Trials, pretty much the root of the evil, basically stemmed from Reverend Paris. And it was also just from the beliefs of the Puritans that were exacerbated by him, by the good Reverend there. And a lot of the claims are that he kind of stirred stuff up because he came in and was preaching at this church there in Salem Village, and a lot of people in that church didn't agree with him so much, right? And he didn't get paid. Basically, he didn't. They gave him somehow in the contract. He wound up with a house, but he didn't wind up with a salary, and he kept asking about it and wouldn't get it. And I guess they didn't approve it because they didn't really approve of him. So a lot of some of the speculations that maybe he stirred this up for that reason, but I don't know that that's the case. But anyways, regardless, he was at the root of it. His daughters, he had two daughters named one of them was named Betty and Abigail. And they were afflicted by what they call, quote unquote, the fits. And basically, this means they started speaking gibberish. Their backs and necks and arms got contorted. And these were happening to other people in Salem Village, as well as neighboring villages. Because of Puritan beliefs, it was believed that this was the work of the devil through witches, which were supposedly worked. They got their orders from the devil. And they believed basically the witches were casting these spells on people which afflicted them with the fits. So Betty and Abigail, as well as their family, were convinced that witches were to blame for their affliction. Naturally, the first person they blamed was Tituba, who was their slave. It was a natural selection since she had previously made a witch cake along with her husband in an effort to help the girls. So basically, the girls, they knew they had this problem, so her and her husband wanted to try to help the girls because they worked for this family, and she had affection for the girls. It wasn't like, she had grown a relationship with them, so she tried to help them. So they actually got their hands on like a black magic recipe for making this witch cake. And they made it, and they were found out, and it just went bad. So, anyways, her and her husband did that, and however, they were accused of using black magic to make the cake, and therefore, that put them in the league with the devil. Not only was she a slave, but she was an Indian slave, so that made it just all that much worse for her. Next, Betty and Abigail blamed two others for their torment. One being a beggar woman who had showed up at their doorstep begging for food for her two young children. She was a beggar, and no one in the village, they knew who she was, but nobody liked the beggar. On top of that, she was a pipe smoking beggar, so that was made it much more worse than her just being a beggar. Now she was a pipe smoking beggar. Then they also claimed the Betty and Abigail. Then they blamed a farm woman, a bedridden farm woman, who was up in age. Her name was Sarah Osborne, and she had a young husband who, in actuality, used to work for her as a servant. Because this old woman had not been to church in over a year, and her young husband was rumored to be an abusive husband, obviously she's also a witch. Not to mention, she has a feud over some land with a family by the name of Putnam, who were esteemed in the parish church. So they were esteemed people or family in the church of Reverend Paris. So Paris's daughter had also claimed to have seen a bird with a human head that allegedly turned into the elder Miss Osborne. These were obvious signs of evil and the works of the devil, of a devil's witch. So this bedridden woman just got, out of the blue. They said, "Oh, she's guilty too. She's causing us to have these fits and stuff." And then with all these claims, by Reverend Paris's daughters, complaints were officially filed on February 29th, 1692. Complaints were filed to the magistrate's office in Salem town. These 3 alleged witches were arrested, and thus they began building of the snowball that would become the Salem Witch Trials. As things would go, even back in the 1600s, news traveled fast, so more people began to say they were afflicted by fits. For the most part, those afflicted were blaming their conditions on witches. 12-year-old Ann Putnam Jr., who was a friend of Betty and Abigail's, and also, the daughter of this esteemed family, that was in the Paris church. Her parents were supporters of Reverend Paris, and blamed her fits on the beggar Sarah Good. Next was 17-year-old Elizabeth Hubbard, who claimed she was chased by a wolf. That wolf supposedly turned into Sarah Good, who was the pipe-smoking beggar. Elizabeth also claimed to have been attacked by the old lady who was bedridden, who was Sarah Osborne. Elizabeth Hubbard was the niece of Dr. Griggs, who was the physician that had originally blamed Betty and Abigail's afflictions on witches. It's a very nasty, nasty cycle we got going here. Elizabeth was also a friend of Betty and Abigail's. So we had Betty and Abigail kind of starting things off of the Paris, and now we've got some of their friends coming into the mix. So it's very suspicious, but on March 1st, lots of people went to a tavern in Salem Village to see what would be the outcome of the questioning of the 3 suspected witches. Before the witches were questioned, they were each inspected for witches' marks, like warts or bumps on their bodies. It was obvious the magistrates had already decided all 3 suspects were guilty of being witches. As the 3 alleged witches were interrogated by the magistrates, the afflicted were in active fits. So as they were talking to these witches, the accusers were out there, contorting their bodies and, making fits and hollering and doing whatever they were doing. They were acting out. And the magistrates had already made the decision about the witches. So I'm sure, these active fits were really playing on anyone witnessing the interrogations. Anyway, so Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne claimed they were innocent. However, they placed blame on each other. So now when it came to Tituba, who was the slave servant, she pled her innocence also, but eventually confessed and then said she was innocent again. So she flip-flopped back and forth. She claimed that the Reverend Paris beat her to make sure she confessed, and also implicated the other 2 supposed witches. So she claimed he beat up on her and told her she needs to confess, and she also needs to bring the other 2 into it and say, yeah, they were kind of all in it together, So all 3 of them were sent back to jail. Good continually proclaimed her innocence. She attempted to escape jail 3 times and actually attempted to kill herself once. The arrest of these 3 alleged witches did not stop the fits from afflicting others. This was basically the beginning of the madness. So All kinds of craziness began to happen to villagers in the area. Some were claiming to see shadowy figures spring into the night sky and split into ghostly entities. Excuse me. Others claimed to have encounters with various unexplained entities. There were claims of multiple encounters with Good, including one by Elizabeth Hubbard, in which Good appeared upon the table of the girl's uncle, Dr. Grigg. Good was supposedly naked, however, only Elizabeth could see her. Ann Putnam Jr. Brought more claims, this time against 3 new supposed witches. The first being Sarah Good's 4-year-old daughter, Dorcas, whom she claimed was pinching and choking her and attempted to get her to sign the Devil's Book. Next up for blame was Martha Corey, who was an esteemed elite in the Puritan church. However, because of an illegitimate son, many in the church did not approve of her. It also did not help that she had expressed that she believed the witch hoopla was a bunch of nonsense. So, that didn't go over very well. They're fighting the devil here, and this woman says, "Oh, it's a bunch of bull." So that got her in a bad way. The third person Anne had accused was a lady who had been under suspicion of witchcraft for years, mostly because it was believed that her grandmother was a witch. The lady's name was Elizabeth Proctor. So basically, Elizabeth Proctor had to be a witch because her grandmother was a witch. Proctor's servant, Mary Warren, also incriminated Martha Corey and Elizabeth Proctor, as well as Elizabeth Proctor's husband, John Proctor. Apparently, during the hearings, Mary Warren had faked the fits, and this infuriated John Proctor. That combined with the fact that he claimed all the witch stuff to basically be hogwash. This didn't sit well with Reverend Parris and Mr. Putnam. Proctor had claimed that all afflicted people should be sent to the whipping post. Well, apparently that didn't go very well, and that was one of the reasons Mary Warren had accused him and brought him into the mix. Well, Ann Putnam Jr.'s servant, Mercy Lewis, was next to jump on the accuser's bandwagon, claiming to be afflicted by Martha Corey and Elizabeth Proctor also. On March 19th, Martha Corey was arrested and brought in to be questioned. A number of family members of the afflicted were there, and basically the whole scene turned into chaos. All of this ended up with Mrs. Corey being bonked in the head by a shoe that was thrown at her. Even her husband, Giles Corey, testified against her. So basically, it started off with 3 people, and then it just went into, really to chaos. You got people just blaming each other. Everybody's becoming a witch, and if you don't agree with what's going on, then you must be a witch too. On March 23rd, Ann Putnam Jr.'s uncle, Edward Putnam, filed a complaint against a 71-year-old woman named Rebecca Nurse. Nurse was a respectable grandmother. Because it was thought her mother had been a witch, you guessed it, it was natural for speculation to come up about her, especially after someone had accused her. However, things went deeper than that. It turns out that Rebecca's father had often battled with the Putnam family over farm boundaries. This came to a head in 1670s, and a legal battle ensued. The legal battle was arbitrated by none other than Francis Nurse, Rebecca's husband, who at the time was the constable of Salem town. Well, the Putnam family lost this battle, so there was a grudge and therefore a natural inclination to falsely accuse. The accusers did not stop with Rebecca Nurse. They also implicated her 2 sisters, Sarah Cloyce and Mary Eastie. So things just were crazy. Accusations flying all over. People would claim to have stuff happen at church and during questionings. People were claiming to see specters. Some were claiming to be bit by specters of the various accused. On April 19th, Mary Warren, the proctor's servant, admitted that she had lied about her witch accusations. She also claimed that all the others were lying also. So what became of this, revelation for her? Well, you guessed it. She was accused of being a witch also. So basically, it's like anybody that didn't believe, they were just a witch. So, as it got late in the spring, accusations still flowed, and they spread further and further away from Salem Village. Between April 20th and June 6th, 54 additional people were accused of witchcraft. It was a very crazy time. Neighbor against neighbor, family member against family member. It was just chaos. A total of 74 people had claimed to have been bitten, scratched, blinded, disjointed, etc. Some even claimed to be taken from their beds and floated off to a secret place where they were forced to sign the devil's book. Of these 74 people, 59 were females, and the victims ranged from 4 years old to 90 years old. So basically, the devil's book was like, I guess, that was like signing your soul over to the devil. And supposedly that's what all the witches were after, for you, their victims to do that. And so this all goes back to the Puritan belief and, their strong belief in good and evil, which they believed that in the wrath of God, and they believed God was supreme and that he controlled even the devil, but he gave the devil loose reins when he wanted. So, I believe in good and evil. I believe most people do, but some of their thoughts on it were a little... I don't think, there's a good and evil and there's a God that looks over, necessarily is over both of them. I think there's a good and there's a evil. So, anyways. So the accusers all named multiple witches. Some named as many as 69 witches for their afflictions. The accusations flew and encompassed all walks of life. No one was safe. If someone got the notion they could claim you were a witch, they would do it. Even 3 dogs were accused of being witches and causing fits. They, by the way, didn't have a trial. They were hanged immediately. Many of the accused had physical deformities or had abnormal appearances, from crooked backs to teeth that looked jagged. Some had obvious mental issues. In this time during the late 1600s, if you got thrown into prison, you were required to pay for your stay there. So you were charged a daily rate, and you even had to pay for your own shackles. If you didn't have the money, then basically you would never leave prison. Some of the accused were taken from their homes and had to leave small children, and in some cases, infants. They would be left many times without anyone else in the house to care for these small children. Can you imagine that? I mean, they come take you and I've got a kid and, laying here in the crib or whatever, it doesn't matter. So obviously the kid's going to die if you don't have somebody to take care of it. So all of this led to, prisons that were bursting at the seams. Not only do you have kids that were left in houses, you have crops that weren't being tended to, and it was a big mess. So as if it couldn't get any crazier, it quickly spread that if you were questioned and you confessed to being a witch, you were treated much nicer. If you confessed and gave names of others who were witches, you were even put in a nicer part of the jail, so you got better amenities. So as you can imagine, this bred even more false accusations. One such accusation was George Jacobs, who was accused of being a wizard. George was 80 years old and could only walk with 2 walking sticks, and not very well at that. Yet it was claimed that he had appeared in specter form and beaten up 12 accusers with his walking sticks. Next, the accuser list was accuser list was a respected reverend from a northern village in Maine, a Reverend George Burroughs. He was loved and respected in his current town, but he had ties back to Salem Village. It would be from Salem Village where these accusations were raised. for it was claimed that Reverend George Burroughs was in fact the king of hell. He was accused of a laundry list of despicable acts, and most of these claims came from Mercy Lewis. She had the same she was from the same hometown as Reverend Burroughs, and after her parents had been killed, she had become his servant. During this time, in what is now New England, there had been many battles between Puritans and the Indians, and many of those Reverend Burroughs had been in. He'd been in many altercations with Indians, and somehow he'd survived all these battles unscathed. Well, that brought up speculation, especially with Mercy's parents. Both of them had been killed in Indian battles or ambushes. So she figured, Reverend Burroughs, as well as many others who had survived like that, must be in league with the Indians, and therefore, because they believed the Indians were devils, he must be in league with the devil. So, obviously, he's a witch. On May 14th, William Phips, Royal Governor of Massachusetts, had returned from an extensive trip to London. He came back to find the jails and prisons overflowing. Recognizing that something needed to be done, he immediately hired new judges and got trials underway. And this time there weren't many true lawyers, so most judges that were presiding over these hearings had no clue about the law, which is just blows your mind. But different day, different time. So June 2nd, 1692, the first trial began. The first witch to be tried was Bridget Bishop, who was the tavern keeper of a rough tavern in Salem town. She was accused of all kinds of crazy stuff, and she was condemned to death for her supposed actions, most of which was based on spectral evidence. So it was not evidence of this world, it was unphysical. Because most of these people were claiming that these fits, these things that were happening to them, were spectral entities of the accused. So it wasn't actually the accused that were coming over here and biting them and pinching them and disjointing them. It was actually their spirits or their spectral entities. So, anyways, that's where most of the evidence for these trials. So it's just craziness. So on June 10th, Bridget Bishop obviously was found guilty and she was hanged. On June 15th, Judge Nathaniel Saltonstall resigned from the court. Basically, he realized that it was a horrible proceeding and that they were using for the most part unseen evidence, the spectral evidence, to convict people. And as you would suspect, it wasn't very long before he was also accused of being a witch. So we're seeing a common theme here. Anybody doesn't go with the flow. It's a huge snowball of just crap. So on June 29th, the trials of Susanna Martin, Elizabeth Howell, Sarah Wilds, Rebecca Nurse, and Sarah Good began. All forms of crazy tales were told, from pin pricks to light orbs to transformations to various animals. During the trial of Rebecca Nurse, a woman claimed to have been pin pricked by Nurse's specter. However, another person in the courtroom had witnessed her pull the pin from her hair and prick herself. The jury found that Rebecca Nurse not guilty. All the afflicted in the audience went crazy. They started acting crazy, disjointed, doing their thing, having fits. So the judge sent the jury back out a second time, and this time they came back and found her guilty. Go figure. During the trial of Sarah Good, she had been accused of stabbing someone, breaking the knife, after someone had claimed to have been the one who broke the knife the day before. The judge just basically said, well, just be more honest, don't make this up. And he stated he already knew that Sarah Good was guilty, so it didn't really matter if he lied about the broken knife or not. So all 5 were found guilty and all 5 were hanged. On August 19th, 5 more alleged witches were hanged, drawing a huge crowd. The hanged were John Proctor, John Willard, Martha Carrier, George Jacobs Sr., and Reverend George Burroughs. Only Elizabeth Proctor was not hanged that day because she was pregnant. 80-year-old Jacobs had all of his belongings confiscated a week prior to his hanging. Sheriff George Corwin took everything from livestock to household items, including Mr. Jacobs' wedding ring. This was an illegal confiscation, and those items rightfully belonged to the family until the death of Mr. Jacobs, at which point the items would be turned over to the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Giles Corey went to trial on September 16th. He pled not guilty and refused to talk during the trial. Every question asked of him, he remained still and quiet. According to the laws at the time, anyone who did not speak could not be tried. However, they would be subjected to a specific method of torture until they agreed to be questioned, confessed, or died. The torture was known as, I'm not sure how you say this. You know French, buddy?
A little bit.
How you say that? Peine forte et dure. I don't know. That's what it is. Sound good to you?
I know fort, it would be pronounced fort, like F-O-R-T, and et would be A, like coup d'etat.
Okay.
So
peine fort et dure.
Peine fort et dure.
Okay. That's close enough. You look it up. I'm sure you'll find it on Google. On September 19th, Corey was stripped and put on a table with a large board on his chest. They began piling large rocks, and this was the punishment. The peine fort et dure. They would put a board on your chest, and they would start piling it with heavy stuff until you basically started talking or confessed or you just died. So they began piling with large rocks on the board on his chest. The only words Corey spoke was to ask for more rocks so he could die faster. It took him 2 days before he died. Can you imagine having a board with heavy rocks on you for 2 days till you just finally kicked out? Good gosh, that's horrible. September 22nd, the final accused were hanged. Those would be Mary Eastie, Martha Corey, Margaret Scott, Alice Parker, Ann Puditer, Wilmot Red, Mary Parker, and Samuel Wardwell. At the hanging, Reverend Noyes, who had no sympathy, stated, "What a sad thing it is to see 8 firebrands of hell hanging there." Then it began to pour rain. So, that was the final ones that were hanged. The tides finally began to turn in Massachusetts, and people started to realize that they had executed innocent people. No kidding. On October 6th, 6 young accused were released from prison on bail, which had never been done, never heard of, so it was progress. On October 8th, 8 men of social stature signed a letter objecting to the trials. On October 19th, a group of women reversed their previous confessions. They claimed they were coerced to confess by the officials performing the questioning. On October 29th, Governor Phipps halted all further arrests and shut down the notorious court of Oyer and Terminer. He also released many of the accused from jails. Now, that court of Oyer and Terminer, that was the court that was proceeding over the trials, the Salem Witch Trials. By the beginning of 1693, all were released from jail, even a few had confessed to being witches. The Salem Witch Trials were pretty much officially over at that point. So, what would cause the ridiculousness that we now know as Salem Witch Trials? Many have speculated on various diseases, from Lyme disease, encephalitis, to funguses or weeds that could cause these hallucinogenic episodes in these accusers. I don't know. Could it be that most of this just stemmed from the social issues and grudges between members of the community? I mean, you had the Putnams and Paris and the nurse family. There was all these grudges going on, but went back, a ways. Could it be a result of Indian paranoia, since many had watched family members get massacred during battles with these people they proclaimed to be devils? I don't know. There's also speculation that this could have just been young girls getting together to have some kind of sick, twisted fun, kind of like the 1600s version of Mean Girls, right? Really, it's what a lot of it sounds good. A lot of them were connected. That's got this whole mess really kicking,
Mm.
It's very, very messed up. Maybe it was a little conspiracy between the judges and to convict, so they could collect the possessions of the accused. Because it was, as we saw with Sheriff Corwin, he took Mr. Jacobs' property and stuff before the man was even, I don't even know if he had been tried yet. He was in jail. They took his stuff, and it was never seen again. So it was well documented that property was confiscated before the accused were even, given a trial or found to be guilty. So there was some more stuff, that happened after that, but it was basically the Salem area rebounding from the effects of the Salem Witch Trials. It was really, you read this craziness. I highly recommend you research this subject, because it's just insanity. People were just, the stuff that went on and the way they were accused, and they just, oh yeah, you're guilty, and it was just like it was nothing. It was I don't know. I can't say any other way than it was crazy, just crazy. Very, very dark period, I think, in the establishment of this country, or the early years. None of this wasn't formally. This was just, we were still part of England at that point, but it is just unbelievable how a society could let something like that just grow and snowball out of control. But I don't know. It shows you, humans are smart and have so much mental power, but it's something like that just to fester and become what it did, and wound up with these people losing their lives. It's just and none of those people, they all, when they were hanged, they all till their death proclaimed their innocence. So it's just a lot of this talk, goes back to the Puritan faith and what they believed, and it's it's very strong. I highly recommend you read it, and especially this book. It was very eye-opening, and you only touched on a little bit of stuff in the history book, so to really find out what happened it's just mind-blowing. So, you got anything you want to add to that, buddy? I know I've talked on my run my mouth.
I think you covered it all.
Yeah. It is. There was a lot of stuff, and so hopefully you got something out of that, Richard. If nobody else, because I know this was a subject you were interested in, buddy, and it was very interesting to me also researching it. I couldn't believe the stuff that went on. So I guess that wraps it up for tonight. I guess we can do our normal spill. Holler at us. Unexplained.reality@yahoo.com. Hit us up Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. The links are in the show notes, including the email address. Love to hear from you. Come friend us, like us, follow us. If you're on iTunes, if you get us from iTunes, please go rate us and review us. That helps us. We just passed 2,000 downloads, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is to us. So that's great. If you have any encounters, stories, something you'd like to share, hit us up on one of those. Contact us on one of those forms of social media there, or just email us. guess you have anything?
Mm-mm.
All right. Well, we'd like to thank Ricky Young as usual. RickyYoung.com. Check out his music. It's awesome. Check out our favorite podcast, Sasquatch Chronicles, Into the Fray Radio, The Graylian Report, Mysterious Universe, Expanded Perspectives, The Confessionals, Monsters Among Us, Somewhere in the Skies, Sasquatch. Oh man, there's another one. What is it? I'm missing something. Graylian Report.
I think you said that already.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay, well I said it twice because it's really good. So yeah, if you, obviously you probably check those out if you're listening to us two knuckleheads. So, but if you haven't for some reason, please check them out. I guess that's a wrap for this week. So we'll let Mr. Ricky Young take us away to the land of notes. See you next week. Peace out.
I did a peace symbol, but I don't know why I did a peace symbol because we're recording a podcast.
Because he's cool like that. He thinks his microphone has a camera.
Gosh.
Peace out, brother.
Bye.
See you.
See you.
Bye. Hey, you just coughed on. We were still recording.
I know. A call for effect.
What are you going to do with teenagers? See y'all next week.
Bye.
Suitcase packed, no words were said. Diamond reeling on the bed. 4 years hanging on a thread. And she said, you know that it's not you, it's me. There's a world I've got to see. Our last kiss landed on my cheek. She picked a plane ride over a plain little life. Needed neon lights, not a Carolina sky. She left these old dirt roads where we fell in love. All for little teacups, not the sweet iced tea. Life over love as she followed a dream. And she didn't even roll the dice. She picked Paris over paradise. Not a day that passes by when a tear don't pass my eye. Memories of when we laughed and cried. I'll never fully understand all the reasons that she left. Wonder what she's doing now. She's planning parties till 5 and not a family of 4. Riding foreign little cars and not the speed of 4. Flying down the wrong side of the road, but not on these back roads. She's walking runways like a runaway train, choosing fashion over passion and love making days. And she didn't even roll the dice. She's picking Paris over paradise. Sometimes she has to get lonely, wishing she could hold me. Oh, but if only she'd have picked a simple life over a one-way flight and a Carolina sky where the stars burn bright. If she had taken that old dirt road and turned right in my arms. If she had chosen those passionate love-making days instead of runways like a runaway train. She never even rolled the dice. She picked Paris over paradise. She picked Paris over paradise.